bits and pieces to be able to do pottery. Steve gave me one of his old kick wheels. So I actually started on a kick wheel. And throwing has always been my first love. You know, I've done hand building and stuff, but throwing was such a challenge for me anyway, that I kind of stuck with it, and I've always enjoyed it since. And it's still a challenge. You know, throwing well is always going to be not the easiest thing in the world to get right, as a lot of you no doubt know. So there we are. And then, okay, this is again some early terracotta lanterns I made on the farm. You put a little tea light inside there. Oh, can you see all this all right? Is it coming through?
Yes, we see.
Yes.
We recognize you.
Yeah, it was a very pretty farm, and the background is one of my first kiln that I built, a paraffin kiln. And this was my first little studio, which was in the old barn. I notice I'm still smoking and I'm still badly dressed, but anyway, that's a potter for you. And there's one of, I think it's Alex Kiljinsky's hot art ovens here. As Nico will be able to tell you more about how this is rolling, because he's actually living with Leslie Ann Hoots, who makes a variety of these fireplaces up in Karatara as well. And just chip in if you want to ask anything. There's my first kiln shed, so to speak, outdoors, with a paraffin kiln over here and electric kiln over here, 3-phase electric. And notice the unusual attention to safety detail. I actually have a fire extinguisher here. Quite unusual for me. Anyway, on the farm is a lovely thing because you can just get away with so much compared to being a suburban potter. So it's a wonderful environment to be in. I mean, nowadays it's not so nice. I mean, I actually sold the farm when I got around to selling it because it's become such a dangerous environment. But that's another issue. And this is some of my first electric wares. The green glaze was actually a glaze given to me by John Ellis. You know, there are a couple of potters who've been so helpful to me with sharing, you know, so generous. And I was very fortunate that our community, you know, at the time I was starting out, have always been very free with advice and help and recipes and clay and all that, you know. So it's a lovely community when there is that generosity around. Yeah, so there was a copper-based glaze and oxidation firing. And if anyone wants a recipe, I may be able to find it. It's the worst thing in my life. You know, the thing I've struggled with most is glazes. I've just been so undisciplined, in a sense, that they're everywhere. I've got about 15 books full of glazes, but not in any logical order or anything, you know, like any sensible person would go about organizing their life. But anyway, that's just because I wasn't a full-time potter, I suppose, for many years until relatively late. So it was always just a casual thing with me. And that's the first kiln I built, first fiber kiln. And Nico is still using this kiln up in Karatara. So it's been very long-lived, actually. It's quite amazing. And it's a fiber kiln. It's fired with paraffin. In it, you can see one of my first reduction firings. I was just starting, which was all very exciting. I mean, for me, reduction firing is just the most wonderful aspect of being a potter because it's such a complex firing. I mean, oxidation firings are relatively straightforward. You know what you're going to get. Whereas with reduction, there can be plenty of surprises, good and bad. And for me, also the glazes are more complex in reduction, but we'll see that later. There's a little reduction-fired oven dish, and with wax resist, and it looks to me like a 10 moku over a celadon, for instance, with wax resist, and the nice toasty color of the clay, which you get in reduction. It's got a bit of life to it, you know, it's not dead and lifeless. I find that really attractive.
Beautiful.
Thank you. And then you see, this was early days, and I was still experimenting and making oven dishes. And I can't remember making this stuff. Obviously, I was interested in poinsettias or something at the time. But this is also wax resist, little casseroles, etc., etc. This is all hand thrown. I was doing a lot of jiggering. I actually started off with jiggering. You know, with a machine where you just pull it down into a mold, and it's a very quick process. It's a wonderful process for production, and it will pop out a ready formed bowl. You can make 200 bowls a day. So if decorating is your thing and not production as such, hand production, then getting a jigger or jolly machine is a wonderful way to go. There may be some pictures of them here. I don't know. We'll see. Again, this is all early reduction jugs. These were heavy as sin, I must admit, these jugs. And this is a pure ash, probably blue gum ash. And then when I was working with Nico, we used more vine ash, and all the ashes give very different effects. So it's also very interesting if you have a fireplace, then using ash is always very interesting. This is a bisque of some teapots and whatever, odds and ends. And then packing reduction firing, I think. And firing, you see the smokiness of the reduction firing, and then there's later on flames and things, all very exciting, you know, it's much more drama in reduction.
Very much.
Yeah. Sometimes I've set the place alight once or twice. I mean, that's taking drama a little to the edge, but you know, sometimes these paraffin burners, they drip, they go out, and the paraffin, because they're so primitive, the paraffin keeps dripping out of, and it drips here into these little collectors, and then eventually the whole lot catches alight, and then there's just a sea of flame under the kiln, which is something to come back to after you've had a cup of tea in the house, for instance. Yeah. But that's it, still fun. And there on the farm, we were basically, it was a wildflower farm, 250 hectares. We collected, these are wild, some of those are the wild pin cushions, and these are the ones I grew in the fields. And we're just cleaning them to deliver to the wholesalers. And then my house was so small and everything, and I got so tired of that little studio, and I was obviously on heavy drugs or something, because I decided to build a new studio this size, actually bigger than the whole house itself. So I don't know what possessed me, but we embarked on it. And there it's taking shape. A very beautiful setting. So this is, you can see how cramped the old one was. And this is the new space. So I had an absolute ball here. Because it was a very beautiful setting. And I had tons of space. My kilns were indoors. The idea was to give classes and have people around. And I never actually managed to develop it to that stage very well. Okay, on we go. Okay, yeah, so now I'm working in a new space. You can see I've got all my electric kilns inside. I mean, even the fuel kilns are inside. Great fun. If I'm going too fast and the slides aren't appearing, just let me know, okay? Yeah, started, sorry?
All good.
All good. So yeah, I'm starting with eventually those African woman vessels, and they morphed slowly over time to be quite a popular line of mine. They were a lot of fun. I don't know, it was just a strange progression. You just happen something clicks, and eventually the proportions got better and better. These are the little early ones where they're still quite squat and not well proportioned. So this is the first. This is the gestation of these, and then I raku'd most of these, and the loss rate was hugely impressive, like at least 50%. But anyway, and then they got slightly bigger and taller, and I had a lot of nice rocker glazes at one stage. And that's eventually developed the studio into a more comfortable. As Leslie says, there's a typical piece of Meyer furniture there, but that's Meyer, sort of Meyer pottery furniture. So she's very rude, my wife, anyway. And then I was experimenting a bit with, I think this is Warford White, and then I was doing, where you make, what's it called? Marbling. So I would make slip from my throwing water and add underglaze powder or oxide powders or whatever, and then just mix them together, which was a lot of fun. I must say, I had a lot of fun with this process. And this is John Ellis's copper glaze. Not very attractive pots, but anyway. And that's also John Ellis's glaze, which shows up decoration very nicely, I must admit, on a Wolford White. And this is fired to about cone 7 in oxidation, cone 7, cone 8. I may even have that glaze if anyone wants it. I could scratch it out.
Yes, please.
I wouldn't mind finding it for myself again, frankly. If be nice. Well, yeah, if anyone wants a glaze or anything, just get hold of me. What?
Just phone John.
Just phone John, yeah. He may not even have it still, but he's probably better organized than I am. Okay, packing a reduction firing again. And this is now a reduction firing. You see, because now the flames in the kiln, you're pouring in more fuel. Excuse me if I'm being a bit simplistic. A lot of you know all this, but just tell me if I must go faster or forget this. But you're pouring more fuel into the kiln than it can consume. So the flames come out. They're looking for oxygen. So when you open a porthole or bung, there you see flames, and all reduction potters have lost their eyebrows at one or other time. And that's the flames going up the chimney, you see. So they're rolling right, it's a downdraft. So they're going right up, and then they're going under, and then they're coming up the chimney, the flames. It's a very exciting process, yeah. It seems uncontrolled, but it's not really, because, a kiln is a device for controlling flames. So it's a real purpose. So it's scarier than it looks, but there's no question, paraffin can create a sea of flames, and if you're doing gas reduction, you can blow up the studio. It's not the safety aspect. You have to be aware of what you're doing. Okay, they're my electric kilns. That's the larger view of my farm studio. It was an indulgence. I wasn't financing all this out of my pottery. I had a business in Cape Town, a contracting business, and we had at one time over 100 staff. So I was sort of remotely managing the business in Cape Town and managing the farm and running a studio as best I could. So this was possibly about 30% of my time in here. Okay, and that's sort of how it developed, the studio area here, and this was the staff quarters and the little house, and then the barn I developed into accommodation over here where the old studio had been divided and put in new floors, mezzanine floors and everything. But this is the setting, and now today I've sold this farm, and it's now a health retreat, one of those high-priced health resorts. There's a beautiful river down here. There's a river coming down. It's all very attractive. So, and I put in a lot of dams and things like that. But anyway, I felt that I'd done my time in farming and moved on. And then easy plek, Nika, easy plek. This is Nika. Yeah. Then Nika very generously allowed me when we lived, my Leslie bought a place in Paarl, and then I needed a place to work close by, and Nico said I could come share his studio with him. So thank you, Nico.
Pleasure, my mate.
We had a good time. We had a lot of laughs.
Best 3 years of my life.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I learned a lot, you know, from Nico. This is the interior. It looks messy, but it was very effective. I mean, a lot of pots came out of the studio. And this is Nico's gas kiln, which is incredibly reliable. It's like a Swiss watch, this gas kiln. You can almost fires itself. That's me just when I arrived there. And this this is now my paraffin kiln from the farm that's arrived in Nico's place. We used, and this is a typical, it's a little trolley kiln, as you can see. I turned it into a trolley kiln because previously it was just you had to lean in, and nothing kills a potter's back, you know, because you've got to lean in that far to get to the back shelf. And with heavy pots, you know, it's crippling. So trolley kiln, if you can get it, is just a wonderful, wonderful kiln. Easy to pack, lots of space, real pleasure to use. There we are, and this is the system of firing. You see, you've got a drum of paraffin, and then you've got a tank here which has got a little float on it, and this determines the height of this thing determines the pressure going to the burners, and it also maintains the flow, tops up the flow. And here are the burners, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 of 8 paraffin burners. This is the cheapest way to fire in reduction with paraffin. And so it's a nice fuel, but it's incredibly messy. Not as messy as waste oil, which you know, a lot of potters use waste oil, which is the messiest of all, perhaps. The nice thing about paraffin is a natural draft, whereas waste oil, you have to have a fan of sorts, usually, to create the draft. And these burners were done by Paul Else, and he gave me a tremendous amount of advice and help in the early days. You know, Paul knows all there is to know about building kilns and equipment. That man is an absolute encyclopedia of pottery technique, and a good potter to boot. Yeah. And there it is, firing, just for scale. It's sitting on an old pad here. I think this old catenary arch kiln was on here, wasn't it, Nico?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nico had a huge, wood-fired catenary or gas-fired catenary.
Yeah, it was wood-fired and paraffin at the end.
Okay.
But that Garth, I've got some gas burners on that going on very soon. So moving over from the paraffin to the gas on that kiln.
On this kiln, okay.
The fiber kiln, yeah.
But
Were you able to
gas
get
burners are lovely. It's difficult to get them, sorry.
the fittings? I was wondering, where did you manage to get the fittings, Nico? Because that is a challenge.
The kiln on that photo on the right-hand side was David Walters's old 60 cubic foot gas kiln, which I've got the burners of now to put on that 35 cubic foot fiber kiln. As you get older, gas firing just becomes easier. The firing with paraffin, you have to be wide awake all the time. And as Garth said, you know, sometimes there's surprises, and the older that you get, the less you want surprises, unless it's good ones.
Run as fast. But you think the thing is with paraffin, you can maybe outrun it. You're not going to outrun a gas explosion. You've got to be careful. And there's Nico. In the early days, I think he's making wine coolers or something. So look, as a production potter, you've got to be able to produce items to size and width and everything, practical wares. And they've all got handles on, and yeah. And Yari is making large chimney pots. These are thrown in 2 or 3 parts, I think. You can see more or less the completed one here with the lip and everything. This one hasn't got its lip. Still on the wheel, in fact.
Yeah, Yogi and myself, we thought we were going to get rich with chimney pots. Not.
But lekker strong lifting them up and carrying them around. Well, it actually takes 2 people to pick these things up and move them around. And yeah, Nico is wax resisting a large platter. Also, Nico also uses a lot of double dip glazing with wax resist, and then he usually puts vine ash, sprays vine ash around the room. The interior is glazed and the exterior is just sprayed with vine ash. Yes, some pots I was making when I first got to Nico's studio. And this little pot will turn up again. Made a whole series of these from this is the Bernard Leach book. Okay, and as you get better at throwing, the most wonderful thing is you can pick up a book and you can see something you like and you can make it. It's just the most wonderful thing. So I saw these little, I don't know, sort of lidded ramekins. You see them?
Yes.
And there they're starting. So they'll eventually be coming up in a photo. And these are hexagonal jars, lidded jars. Packing another kiln. And that's some of this is vine ash. You see, they're the hexagonal jars. That's a celadon, that's vine ash, that's a tin moku, that looks like a copper of sorts. This is just ash on the outside and double dip copper and celadon. And this is vine ash. This is pure vine ash. There's nothing, absolutely, you put it in a spray gun and you spray it on. That's it. And then a typical ash glaze, they always develop these runs. Yeah.
Okay, when you say just ash, is it not the ash mixed with anything else, just ash sprayed onto the pot?
I can talk to Nico about that. He put me onto it. No, it's just pure ash washed.
Oh, interesting. Thanks.
So dried or mixed with water?
You take the ash out of your fire pit or your fireplace, put it in water, take off all the stuff that's drifting, and then you put it through a 80 mesh sieve, and you just use that very fine ash. Put it into water, into like a slip, into a spray gun, and then you spray it on. You can actually manipulate how much ash you want where, so you can get some nice runs on the ash or a very thin layer, which gives you a nice toasty sort of finish as well. But yeah, no, it's quite lekker to use.
I've got a question. Sorry to interrupt. Have you guys tried an ash glaze in oxidation firing?
I've never had an oxidation fire kiln, so no.
And remember that
Amelia, I've done it.
Yes, Leanne, yeah. And?
Yeah, I had some good results. I took a leech recipe, and it was Simon, I think Simon Leach, and it was just my normal white stoneware and the ash, and then I put in some copper, not copper, sorry, cobalt oxides, and I got very nice results in my kiln. So you do have to fire it a little higher so that obviously you get the good melt. But I think if you added a frit, you'd probably have you'd probably do it a little bit lower.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, interesting, because I would imagine this the green is coming from the reduction. So if you did an oxidation, as you say, Leanne, you put in a little bit of cobalt, that's going to give it some color and some life. Yeah, it can be a bit lifeless.
Yeah, definitely the plain one, because I did both, and the copper came out quite nicely, but I was a bit, it had a bit of pitting, but the cobalt came out very nicely. I really liked it. But I think I've been collecting ash now for about the whole of winter, and I want to do some experimenting with that again in the oxidation. But I want to add some fruit so that I can maybe go a little bit lower in the temperature.
Yeah, it doesn't melt very well, you know,
No.
under current 8 or so. And the other thing you must do with your spray gun is it's good to maybe bore out the little nozzle a little bit, because it sticks a lot unless you've got a very fine sieve. So and where you spray, the more you spray more up at the top of the pot, and then you'll get the runs. You've got to be very careful about at the bottom. I will just run onto the foot and onto the shelf. So got to be very careful of that. Okay, now then I went to, after Nico, I went to Yogi. I was sort of in between places, and then Yogi, I moved to Claremont, and then I didn't have a place to work. So Yogi very kindly, Yogi De Beer, let me work with him for a while, for about a year. And as most of you know, Yogi makes these very big jars, and that's his kiln in the background. And he's busy glazing a raw, it's all raw glazed. He's glazing a raw pot here with a spray gun. That's his studio table. The pots have become so big, he now has a little trolley system with a rail overhead, which transports these enormous pots to the kilns, so they don't have to be picked up, because it takes two, 3 people to pick these things up.
Amazing.
And there are some wine jars which he's making now, mostly in the kiln. And obviously these have to be picked up with the machine. They're so heavy. So it's a whole, and you can see underneath this big one, he's got 3 kiln shelves, because it's just the weight is so extreme that it would break a single kiln shelf. And these he sells to the wineries now, and they're priced anywhere, you know, between 20 to 40,000 each. So that's what it takes. And you know, you have to have a kiln this size, and they are fired in reduction to about cone 9 and unglazed. But glazed on the interior. I think, I'm not sure if they're glazed. I can't remember in the interiors.
No, they all raw, and they being prior to cone 10 down.
Oh, okay.
It's incredible.
This one has just been sprayed with ash, as you can see. Now Yogi has got his ash has been mixed with a bit of kale, and just from the slop that falls off and everything, and bits of glaze and everything, and which is very nice, because it's not so translucent. You can see it's become slightly opaque, and some runs from the ash. But I like this. I think Yogi's kiln, for me, gives the nicest ash reduction because of the slightly contaminated ash. Anyway, so that's the finished wine, and they're enormous now. They're much bigger than this, perhaps a third bigger than that now. And they're used by all. Yes.
What does he use to fire? Gas or
paraffin? Paraffin, and blown through very, very, very big paraffin burners.
Thank you.
Six paraffin burners, and a big blower. It's a very big, and it's a long process, very slow, because it's a raw firing, so it creeps up in temperature for a long time, as you'll see in the next slide.
Can I just ask one question quickly before you move on?
Yeah.
Does he throw this in these in sections and add on the wheel, or does he add coils? I mean, surely you can't center this amount of clay. Some people can, but
no one could. It's you will either mold or throw a bottom piece like that, like a big pension type dish, and then he takes from his extruder, he's got ready extruded coils, and then those extruded coils are laid on one by one as he goes up. And then he gases it, each section, to stiffen it, and then does the next section, etc., etc. But it's a difficult process. You've got to be very slow, unevenness creeps in, and to get an attractive curve like this is very, very difficult in sections. But Yogi's been doing it for years, and he makes very attractive pots. He's limited to this base size by the wheel and all sorts of things. But yeah, it's all section and then closing in, pulling enormous handles off the neck there.
Right.
And this is what happens when you fire too quickly. This is a full-size bath. I'll switch my phone off. Sorry, folks.
That will make
Silent. This is a full-size bath that he made, and it just exploded. So he had to abandon this whole firing, unpack it. I think he made 3 or 4 tries, hey, Nico, to make this bath. Eventually succeeded. And it was glazed in. Huh?
I think he made more than 3 or 4, but then gave it up afterwards.
Yeah, one came out. I know because I saw it. And it was glazed in 10 moku. So it was a commission. But this shows how difficult it is to fire big pots, you know, because if you do it too fast, it's going to be steaming inside and boom.
Gosh.
Okay, yes, John Bauer. And you see now, there are those little dishes. And he insisted I take a photo because he bought them. He bought them to use in his oven. And he was telling me how remarkably they stood up to the punishment he was dishing out to them. So, and there they are in their natural environment, so to speak. Okay, and then at Yogi's, I was doing a bit of putting glass into the top of my lid. So when I was throwing, I'd throw a little depression over here, and then I'd put these glass bits. This is blue glass and green glass. And the brighter the green glass, the nicer it's going to look. Generally, I wanted in a lid, I wanted somewhere where it's not going to get food, because glass, when it cools and it's been fired, it crazes like mad. So it's not really food safe. Though I know Steve Shapiro was doing some in the base, but he was doing it in a different way. And then, yeah, just some interesting just to show you the color variations you can get from copper red. This is a copper red glaze as a reduction. At that time at Yogi, I was producing these. There you can see the glass. So throw a little, thank you. You throw a little depression and I just make a wavy little line and put the glass in, and boom, cone 10, it comes out. There you've got it. It makes the lid slightly heavier, but you know, it's a decorative pot. It doesn't matter so much on a bigger scale. And there's a little castle with a moat. And yeah, you can see 2 different techniques. So see there, this is the plain glass. Yeah. And then this is just glazes, a white glaze and a blue glaze, which I just threw in liquid onto the bisque, and I'll just mix them around. So that's another technique for creating a sort of marbled effect. Leslie calls these my Willard's crisp handle design. And there it is with a little fountain effect on the lid. And this is an interesting glaze. This is a copper-based glaze, Joe's Green, which has given me some nightmares and some joys. It's a critical glaze. One of those glazes, like you dip it 1 second too long, the pot comes out black. You dip it 1 second too short, and the pot comes out pale white. You get it just right, you've got the absolutely beautiful pot. In fact, I got one here. this is really, the variety you can get in color. You can see the bottom has got reds in it. Can you see that?
Yes.
And then the greens and all the tones. This is my little Afro-Oriental stage, you see, with a little wooden handle thing, which you either hate or love. So we won't talk about that now. But you can see how over here, it's gone quite black. And if you make a mistake with the dipping, the whole pot's going to be black. And you can't use this glaze on functional wear. It was about 6% copper. Okay, yeah, some of the larger African woman vessels, let's call them. The one's got not a chip, but a pepper dew on her shoulder for some obscure reason. This is in Paarl, our backyard in Paarl. So I made a lot of these. These are like the rejects that I got left over, and sold quite a few. But this one's done in reduction. This is Raku, that's Raku, and the rest of Raku there. But Rakuing something this size, and it's big, you know, it's like 600. It's just the reject rate is atrocious. Okay, and here's some more. When I got to, then had a studio in OBS for a while. After leaving Yogi, I bought a house in OBS, put a studio in there. And then I moved, OBS, I got tired of Observatory. Well, nice as it is, the vibe, etc., but the crime and the grit and all that sort of thing. And I've always liked the country living more than the city living. So I eventually rented out the OBS place, sold it, and moved to Rika Steel, where I am now. And then I built a big gas-fired kiln. I call it a hybrid kiln. It was half bricks and half fiber. You'll see a picture of it later. And then I started firing that in reduction. And this is a 10 moku jar and this was actually bought by one of your Joburg potters, that lady, what is her name, who died recently? Very, very concerned with the Joburg pottery scene. Anyway, can't remember her name now, but she bought it.
It's exquisite.
And then, yeah, I was into the shape. So you see, I'm very orientated to the Orient. I'm very much in that, well, generally have been in the Anglo-Oriental school, the Leach and Marder, that, you know, the guys like Heinrich Benowitz, Isaias Bosch, Nico Liebenberg, Steve Shapiro, and what's the chap up in Swellendam? Nico?
David Slabobursky.
Yeah, David Slabobursky. So we're kind of a dying breed, you know, that starting that whole school. But the reason for it was that for me, pottery is about beauty, about elegance, and about proportion mostly. And then to get that, you have to have technique. So I've collected over the years, you know, hundreds of books on Chinese, the excellence of China. And these people have done it all. And they've done it better than you and me will ever do it. And done it for thousands of years.
How awesome.
And this is a wonderful book and expensive. But just wonderful. And you must, the beauty in here is absolutely breathtaking what they've done. So if you look at that and study the proportions and the workmanship and the craftsmanship, it's a different thing. You know, it's not possible for one person to even begin to achieve what these people have achieved in thousands of years, but you can just learn a lot from the shapes and forms. And that's important in pottery, the shape.
Can I ask you,
Thrownware, yes.
That is carving that you do. You don't attach it. You're carving into the clay to get your designs.
Yes, yes. It's a lot of work, but I find that it's not like a sprig. You know, a sprig sits bold. You can always see it's a sprig, whereas this becomes really a part of the pot. This is a celadon jar bought by a doctor friend of mine. And it's a celadon that hasn't quite celadoned. You see, when they're a bit oxidized, then they can be a bit yellowish. So that's what happened here. So in a reduction kiln, you always you learn the kiln eventually. I mean, it's got an area where there's heavy reduction, there's an area where it's hotter, there's an area where it's cooler, and you learn to put your pots in these various areas. This is a Chino type glaze. Chino glazes are very interesting if you're into reduction pottery, because the variety of effects they can give you are quite stunning. I mean, you look at this little jar, made while I was at Nico's place. I mean, this is a carbon trap Chino. Now, what this is doing, when you start your firing, at a certain temperature, the glaze will melt and the carbon that's come off from the burners, the soot, will be trapped. And the lid has got hotter and it's gone to an orange Chino. So there's not two different glazes. This is the same glaze. So Chinos are very interesting glazes. And there's a world of them. There's a world of Chino glazes. This is also a Chino. And this is this Afro-Oriental thing with a little carved. I just make a hole in the lid. You see, and I put a stud through here, a screw and a washer, and into these little African men. So this is my Afro-Oriental pottery. The despair of many people, I must add. So the thing about throwing vessels is that often you want them to look like they're stuffed full of air. You don't want them to look flat-sided. So to get this curve, and then the relation of the foot to the gallery is also important. So all these relations are there, and you want to get them as right as you can. And the relationship of the height of the pot to the width. So a good place for that, if you want to learn something about that, and you like functional pottery, then this is about the best book you could ever get. Functional Pottery by Robin Hopper.
How awesome.
That'll tell you everything you need to know about proportions, what the history are, lots of examples. And Robin Hopper was an amazing potter. There's a John Leach pot. How simple and elegant is that?
I've got that book. It's a fantastic book. I can highly recommend it. It's really
Right. And then I also, when I was in Rubek in the 2013-14 period, I started getting into tin glazes. And this is fired to cone 6 or so. This is actually a terracotta clay, but it's Reinder's terracotta clay, TR6. And that is a very robust clay. It can take almost any sort of punishment. It actually fires to cone 10. But this particular pot is a tin glaze, which a tin glaze is about the best and most expensive pacifier you can get. Most people use zircon. It's about 750 Rand a kilo. So I don't know. I just managed to get a very nice effect out of it. As you can see on these pots. This is the way it breaks on the decoration was for me very attractive. And unfortunately, it was a combination of glazes, of sort of waste white glazes. And it briefly formed a perfect perfect tin white, and then I couldn't recreate it again. So there's a unique line of vessels there.
Well, it reminds me of the chinos at the studio, where we chucked in about 3 or 4 different chinos together to get the most amazing one, and we'll never get it back again.
Yeah, yeah. The waste glazes at work. So normally you use the waste glazes to kind of line. Well, Steve Shapiro did. At one point he had the world's ugliest brown waste glaze, which he used to line the inside of all his pots with, which was a very economical measure, but I'm not too sure about the aesthetic. Anyway, oh, it was cheapest. It was worse than the inside of a baby's nappy. But anyway. So then I've recently started experimenting with, as you can see, whites, and I'm using, this clay is white earthenware, and it's nice. It's a low firing, it's a very white glaze, and you can use underglaze with it. I mean, this glaze, as it goes over cone 6, it just flops. But below that, I fire it to cone 3 or 4, and it does very well at that temperature. It becomes quite nice ring to it, nicely vitrified, and a bit tougher than, you know, a lot of earthenware down at 1080 or wherever it is. You know, you bump the thing and it chips and all that. So I haven't been really fond of earthenware. It's nowhere near as strong as stonewares. So, but I'm having a lot of fun with this, because now you can decorate, you can do all that sort of stuff. That's the back, that's the bottom of the pot. And there they are in the kiln, little jewels. You see, it's very unusual for a reduction fired potter with all those earthy tones and dull colors and soft and whatever. And suddenly I'm discovering I can get all these bright, delightful things out of a kiln. So that was all a lot of fun. And obviously overdoing it a bit with certain stuff, but you know. And this was an exhibition we have something in Rika Herbst called Solo Studios every year. So they issue invitations, people get tickets, and they can come to individual potters' studios and have a glass of wine, etc., etc. So, but then last year, all the potters decided to have a group exhibition. So yeah, lots of fun, lots of color, bright, different vibe altogether. I'm still sort of now. I'm kind of still in this zone. Okay, and then here's my view from my studio, Rika Herbst. This is the Rubik Valley, runs along here. It's me outside my studio, just putting the French doors in and looking typically potterish, I suppose. And
wearing the uniform.
Hey?
You're wearing the uniform.
Yeah. And these are throwing little kiln fillers to pop in between the other stuff. Packing, this is what I'm busy with, the underglaze and the white stoneware, the various shapes.
Garth, can I ask a question?
Sure.
You mentioned that you had an exhibition with other potters in Rika Herbst. Are there lots of potters in that community?
Yeah, about five of us from Rika Herbst and Rika West.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of other potters there besides you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably been a potter the longest.
Okay.
But there are some, and several of them came to me for classes and then got going on their own and done very well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can see I've been experimenting with a bit of gold luster, which I'm going to tell you is a very dangerous substance, because you can go, it's got to be used with caution. And of course, I splashed it on, and it looks a bit bling, you know. But anyway, interesting days. I'll get it right. I'll get it right eventually, just a bit more discreet. But fun. I mean, really, gold luster is fun. You put it, you paint the stuff on, and it's dull, and you put these pots in the kiln, fire it up to 700, which is quick, and then the next morning or late afternoon, you open it, and you've got these beautiful, shiny things. It's just wonderful. Very exciting, very exciting. Yeah, so this is the kiln I built here in Riebeek. It's got brick side. It's got a fiber door. This is the chimney going underneath. Also a big downdraft, and inside it's got an arched fiber roof. And this is about the last kiln I'm ever going to build. But you know, you save yourself a fortune. This would be 150,000 rand from a minimum, probably from a supplier. Cost me a couple of thousand rand. Not a couple of thousand. Okay. What I had to struggle with was getting these gas burners. These I got the burner part here from the UK and used pipe fittings, and then had to have a special flame retention nozzle built by a Joburg engineering guy to go on the end. And this whole exercise cost me about 25,000 rand, these burners. So if you want to do a kiln on the scale in gas, you're probably now going to have to spend 30,000 rand for a set of 8 burners. And this is a recent exhibition that Sarah Walters had in her gallery and studio in Newlands. This is one of my pots here. And Nico is also there, as you can see. And Catherine Brennan, there she is. Yogi. David Walters, of course, the legend. Sarah does wonderful work. Martin Swart. Henny Meyer, you all know. Ralph Johnson, of course. So all the local, Tanya Babb, she knows how to use gold luster all right. Okay, here's a panorama of the house, the studio, etc. And so my time largely revolves around this area of the house, and even more so in summer over here, where I spend time in my swimming pool. So that's it. That's the slideshow. And now I'm free for, I can show you a couple of pots if you want. And you can ask me any questions you like. I'll show you some pots. I made some in tin. It's a little oil bottle. So this is what I like about pottery, is that, you know, I was always a frustrated inventor. And, you know, it's very difficult to invent something and take it to market and something. It can be a process of years and years, and then it still won't work. Pottery, I mean, I can make this in a day, and by the end of the week, I can hold this finished product in my hand. So it's instant prototyping and instant production. And it's the most rewarding thing I've ever found in my life, is that I can think of something, and within a week, I can hold the tangible product in my hand.
Garth, would you like to stop sharing? Then maybe we can see bigger on the screen.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yes.
That better?
Yes.
Handles are important. This is thrown in 2 parts, by the way. So I will throw this up to here, and then I'll just, maybe on another wheel, or just put a little coil here, and then throw this part up to here, and then let it harden and put the handle on.
And what are you using, Garth? Which clays are you using?
Oh, this is an earthenware clay, Rangers TR6. And it's the best clay I've ever worked with in my life. It can take any sort of punishment. Nico's worked with it a lot. You can join things together. It turns well, and it throws superbly well. And it's fairly smooth. Doesn't have a lot of grog in. And it's very nice to work with. if you're going to do it. And then on the earthenware front, yeah, this is the white earthenware from Reinders. Also, okay, you know, it's not going to throw as well as that, as the earthenware by any means, but it's okay. And then I'll just show you a big bottle, a bisque bottle. This is work that I've been busy with for years, but I actually now started. You can see the process here, if you like. Well, I've carved away to get the raised lines and given it a bit of texture. But it is a lot of work, but it's not going to be like a sprig or something that's going to come off or anything, because it's part of the pot.
Yes.
So this is being glazed inside, still got to be sprayed outside. But you know, I want something that looks elegant, that has a nice form, nice curves. These are all important things, how each part of this relates to the other part, to get those proportions right and attractive. So, I haven't always been conservative. When I was with Nika, we were working with this. This is, again, this Joe's Green, which is 6%. It's a very simple glaze, but it's a code 10 glaze. And these are my little squared off vessels that I had a lot of fun with, putting little feet on them, you know, lots of little decorative elements. I mean, you people are better at this than I am, but as a thrower, you get so bored of that constant roundness, that unmitigating roundness.
Gorgeous.
So what you do is you throw a round pot, and then while it's still on the wheel, you just put your hand in, you run it up like this, like this, like this, and you'll get a nice square, but it'll be out of round. And you leave it there, and then you just throw this round again. And then, you know, everything will be round. And get your lids to fit properly. It's important. Nothing worse than a loose, horrible fitting lid.
I think we'll have to get you to do a proper throwing course and demonstration, Garth.
Yeah. Yeah, Nico's the one as well. For big platters, Nico's the guy to go to, and I'm the jar lid guy. So this is wax resist. This is a white glaze underneath at the bottom, and then you do your wax with the brush, and then you dip it into a blue glaze.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this is a very nice combination. And notice that I haven't made the sides straight. I've given it a little bit of an outside curve, because pots always look better if they've got they've got a lot of air in them. You don't want them to look tight and narrow and mean. You want them to look like someone's got a bit of like that. Always makes them look better. The other thing about pots are feet. You know, as a functional potter, this foot has to look elegant, but it also has to support the bowl. You don't want bowls to be too tippy. So I could make this bowl look much more elegant by making this foot smaller. But in something that is going to have a reasonable function, like this big bowl, yeah, you can see how big I've made that foot. Because I don't want it to fall over when someone puts fruit in it or uses it or whatever. So there is a tendency amongst people to want to make the feet too small. And if you look at Chinese pots, they actually, the feet are generally quite big in functional vessels. The Chinese do use big feet. But I've made some decorative pots, which I'll show you now, and I am doing small feet because these are just things for display. They're not going to be used for any real practical purpose. So yeah, to get that elegant look, I've placed a very small foot on it. And these are unglazed. They're bisqued and they're waxed, and they're just going to be. I'm trying to develop a slightly matte glaze for this because I don't want a shiny glaze. And and this pattern here is chattering. So this is very easy. You put on your underglaze and you take a springy tool with a right angle like this. And you just hold it here at an angle like that and let the wheel spin and go tuk, 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 tuk. It'll spring naturally. It's very easy. It's a fun technique.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. And then it's sort of now coming to my close now. Just some good books that you might enjoy. Chinese. This is the pot that my favorite pot of all time. It's the most elegant pot I've ever seen. This tall bottle. That's a Sizu ware from China. That was very typically white and black. In that type of. And this is a book on Chinese glazes by Nigel Wood, which will give you all the background to the classical Chinese glazes. So local books, you've all seen this old SB book. It's very dated in terms of the glazes and stuff. The Art of Throwing, Alex McAlane. And then a classical for the more old-fashioned throwing, Michael Casson. He's dead now, but he was the king of jugs. No one made a more beautiful jug than Michael Casson.
Garth, would you be so kind to maybe send us the pictures of the books that I can share later with the rest of the group?
Yeah, absolutely. Great book. Josie Warsaw, Potters for beginners. Then for technically glazing, John Britt's books.
Oh, yeah.
Mid-range glazes and high-fire glazes.
Oh, awesome.
And then I suppose you've all seen the Susan Peterson book, which is just such a wealth of knowledge. Very old-fashioned, but you know, pottery is an old-fashioned craft, so it's all relevant. Okay, folks, that's me.
Garth, it's very interesting. I must say, I love to see the diversity in your work. But what scares me is that you're part of a group of potters that will be extinct in a couple of years.
Not if we can help it.
Could be this weekend if we have a bad party.
Sad parties, you know, that there's not a lot of young throwing potters, you know, throwing and working at that scale. I mean, even like Yogi De Beer's big work, you know.
Well, that's very rare because of the expense. And now we're talking hundreds of thousands of rands to build a kiln on that scale. So there's one other guy, I think, built a very similar kiln, Leon or someone up in Gauteng as well. So yes, we are a dying breed for sure, because people are doing more contemporary modern stuff, and throwing is seen as a bit old-fashioned and not exciting enough. Especially, everyone wants to push all the limits all the time. But I think within the confines of what I would say, beauty, elegance, and proportion, you can still do a lot, you know. And I like the fact that it's an old-fashioned skill, that it has these roots back thousands of years, and it does demand a certain amount of discipline and skill.
Absolutely.
So that's all nice. And I don't know what people want to do it. I mean, people must do more courses and stuff. I'm going to be giving weekend courses here, where in our guest rooms, and people can come for a weekend and do an intense throwing course as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Rika, can I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
Garth, thanks. That was so informative. What a wonderful talk. I was just interested, I don't know if I missed it. You mentioned a very high-firing terracotta clay earlier on. Can you tell us which terracotta clay that is?
Yeah, Reinder's TR6.
TR6.
Yeah. I think it's called 6S now. It's 6S.
Okay.
Smooth, yeah.
Have you got that, Rika? Are you writing it down, Rika?
I am, because we're looking for a terracotta clay for the wood firing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
It's superb. I've used it for 15 years now, and I can't complain.
Awesome.
He makes a lovely TR6G, which is a fantastic rock clay for hand building, and then the TR6S, as Garth said, for throwing.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks for the wonderful talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thanks for all being so patient, and your interest is appreciated.
Yeah,
Thank you, Garth. That was great.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
We're just waiting for Maggie to join us again. Her internet seems to be up and down. She'll be with us in another minute or two. I don't know, any other questions for Garth?
Sorry, Rika, I'm going to have to leave. I can't be here any longer. I've got somebody at my door. Sorry about that.
Thanks for joining. I am recording. I'll send out a link afterwards. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Garth, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. We will be in contact.
Thanks, Garth.
I just want to see if Maggie's back up. She's been having a bit of an issue with her internet, and then we can start, because I can actually start sharing her work on the screen as soon as she's in. Sorry, we're just waiting for Maggie. I don't know what I would like to suggest. If you guys have any suggestions, what you would like us to discuss, or who you would like to meet on the ClayChat, send me a message. Then I can try and book them in advance. For our next ClayChat, we will have Pride Moyo on his sculptural pieces. He'll be telling us a bit about his work, and I haven't confirmed the second speaker. So yes, we're open for suggestions.
How often do you do the chat, Rika?
We try to do it twice a month. It depends on my, it's determined by my exams at this point in time. So yes, we'll have one more in November. No, we'll have two more this year. So one more in November and one early in December.
Great.
Yes. There we go. Maggie is joining us. I'm just going to put Maggie's pictures on the screen. Maggie, when you're ready, you'll tell me. Maggie, are you there?
Yes, I am. Sorry, Rika.
Wonderful. Welcome back. If you just go to the first picture, and then you'll be... I'm just going to share, sorry, I've got the last picture. I want to go to the first picture.
Yeah, if you just go through them.
I'll go slowly, and then you can just tell me if I need to go faster. So there you go. This is all Maggie's work. It's her journey. So Maggie, I don't know if you want to say something, or shall I just flip through?
Basically, what I'm showing here is all the experience of experimenting with different types of surface and learning different things as I go along, because I found that just doing stoneware in a electric kiln, I wanted to have some kind of information on the surface. I wanted more of an experience of a surface rather than something just flat and plastic and dipped, and it didn't speak to me at all. So it was wonderful to hear Garth talking about things, because earthenware for me is a lot more plastic looking compared to stoneware, and yet stoneware for me was very dull, and I didn't want to do that oriental part. I didn't want to do the gas or the reduction because I'd probably set my whole house on fire and burn everything in the neighborhood. So I just decided that I had to go and find some other way of creating a story onto ceramics. And so working in clay was a big thing that I really wanted to pursue. And this is just the journey of discovering where I've got to now. The other part about it is that I'm quite shocked at myself, because I never ever expected bling to come out of me at all. I'm a lot more of a wabi-sabi person than an actual bling. However, this is what's creating and this is what's happening. So that's the story of the path that it's taken. And so that's where I sit with trying to say what I want to say on clay.
Okay, I'll stop sharing that, Maggie. Yeah, tell us about your journey.
I started off just wanting to throw and wanting to work in clay, but I started off really being a painter and painting. And then what happened was I ended up in going to visit a friend who was a potter, and she shoved a bisque plate at me and said, paint it while you're waiting. And the next minute I was absolutely hooked. And then Andrew Walford, who lives in our area, my husband did some printing for him. So they swapped me for the price of the print. And so I would go to Andrew, which was such a privilege, every Thursday for about 2 years. And he gave me all his wonderful philosophy on the beauty of working and living a life of clay. And it really was the most wonderful, wonderful time in my life. I'm so grateful for that, as well as like leaving that path and saying, well, what can I do? Because I can't do what he does. So I need to find my way. And my way took a long, long time, because I tried everything. I did everything. I did workshops. Went all over the place to learn what I could learn. So I had incredible mentors. And Marta Zettler decided to take me under her wing and mentor me. And she said I had to have a signature. So I went on this whole thing of what is a signature? How do you find a signature? And then there was another part of it where I was in that time where you had to have a teapot that poured correctly, or a lid that fitted correctly, and I think being an expansive person and coming from an art background, I always wanted to express, but not necessarily get tied into technique. And yet technique, what Garth was saying, is so important, because one has to learn how to make something first in a good way to be able to break that. And so, and create your own voice. And I mean, what is your own voice? It's quite something that my own voice, I'm sort of like looking at it thinking, wow, where did you come from? I went to India in 2015, and I think that's where the bling started, because there was that sort of sense of feeling like, why not? There was so much bling. It's crazy how much bling there is. So yeah, nature's wonderful, and I love that natural, wonderful wood-fired or gas-fired, or the whole feel of that whole, embracing that whole genre. But it's not something that I've found myself doing.
I want to share the screen again, Maggie. There's a couple of pieces that just fascinates me. The technique that you use, where you use underglazes, you use transfers, you use obviously whites and then your lusters. Do you want to tell us more about this piece?
This piece was for the Nationals, South African Nationals in Cape Town in 2014, and it's about what is a ruler, about 30 centimeters in height. Yeah. So I just decided to sit down and do whatever I had. So I grabbed some slip, and I grabbed my clay, and I used some of my wooden blocks and I also make my own stencils and my own stamps, and I make my own lot of things that I use. And so I just decided to do a whole lot of techniques and see where it led to. And then I'd also got some decals from the UK. So I put those on as well. And funny enough, I was advised not to go this whole sort of representing something in yoga or spiritual Buddhism or whatever, because it would upset a lot of people. And also my pots would be very limited to who would buy. And that also for a part of me restricted me as an artist or as a creative person, because we need to let those things go and just make what's in our hearts and become a heartist rather than an artist. You know, it's very difficult to get stuck into those kind of rules and laws and like what's at Mr. Price today, you know, and what's trendy, and because we all need to also sell our work. So one gets very locked into that whole sense of everything, because how do you go out there and what, just copy Pinterest? So it's been my sort of argument in a sense, I suppose. And so I just went for it and just put whatever I wanted on the pots. And it's amazing. I have sold all my pots that I make. So there must be people out there that appreciate the quirkiness of it, or the whatever it speaks to them. Yeah. This has got slip. It's got that Chinese, you know, your underglaze tissue paper. I got that as well from America. I think you sell that, Rika?
Yes.
Yeah, it's got transfer paper. It's got gold luster. It's got my print blocks that I printed. I also printed onto the newspaper or whatever, and then put the newspaper onto the clay while it was still wet. What I like to do is to build the clay surface from the beginning when it's still in leather hard, and then of course now I've just started with Terra Silge, and that's when it's more dry than leather hard. And that seems to be also quite nice, because I don't like the whiteness of leaving the clay unglazed or you know, the bottom or around the rims or under the lids. So I've started to experiment with trying to see what Terra Silge would do as well. So I suppose it's just putting everything onto one pot. I don't know what else to say. Yeah.
Well,
and I love throwing.
The story you're telling in your pot. Are these earthenware temperature?
They are, and I think what I would like to say is that I have this wonderful sense of something not being new, but being sort of have more of an older look, but still being new. There's like a mixture of that sense of feeling for me, of making something that's not fitting into just being a vase.
The collage effect, it's beautiful. I want to just show some of these. There's some of your bling feet.
Very bling. This one's very, very bling. It's owned by Liz, Liz, what's her surname? From Hermanus, who runs the Fine Arts ceramic.
Liz Coates.
Yes. She has this one. Yeah. And these were little tumblers.
And your glaze?
Pardon?
Your glaze?
My glaze is all Amico, Duncan,
nice
tin glazes, you name it. I just hope for the best and shove it on. And I also make my own, there's some of my own decals there as well that I make on the laser printer, the black and white laser printer. So that's a whole another story. You see those little, what are they, like a iron, yeah.
Those ones there.
These ones, the other ones are the round ones. Yeah, they come out, they go in black and they come out that it's the iron content in the printing ink.
Okay.
I have to get that better, that there is, this one here is where you do it with the ink on glass and you roll it and then you use the, it's such a procedure, and not everyone is going to come out well. It's a real hit and miss.
And this, Maggie, that would be your
yeah, that you print on the laser, the black and white laser, and then you John Shirley taught us with the gum arabic in the water, and you wash it, and then you put your ink, and then you wash it, and then you put your ink, and then eventually you print it onto your leather hard clay.
Lithography.
It's lithography, but it's not always easy to control. These were right in the very beginning where I was just trying out things that and of course I'm into like Madonnas and goddesses and I don't know what else. So
I just love the spot where the glaze is moved with that. Is it underglaze or oxide?
I never realized that glaze on top of glaze can run.
It's gorgeous.
So I was trying to get some kind of a bling on the top there, and then I put that's just stain with some frit, that blue stain with frit, and then it's just a earthenware underglaze that's gone over it, and it's all run together. It just runs.
Beautiful. I love that effect.
You can't control it. You never know. And believe me, when you want it to run, it won't run. But when you just leave it, then there it runs, you know. So I do like the runny. I don't want it to be static and still. And Garth, I want to just tell you, I admire you guys. I really do. I've never been I'm not a maverick like you guys, but it's just incredible what you do.
No, yeah. It's wonderful. It's lovely. I love the quirkiness.
Yeah, it is. It has come out quirky. I did a course I did a 2-day with Elalu Amira, yeah. and she taught me a few other little tips on printing and things like that, which was very intense, but it was really a shove to go and jump into the big sea, you know. Yeah, this was whole luster. That whole bowl ended up full of luster, and I love luster because it just covers everything.
No, I love the way you use your own printing and then like the decals. It's just gorgeous. I love the combination.
Yeah.
That picture is just gorgeous.
Yeah, this was quite a big pot. It was quite heavy, and I just thought I wanted it to look battered and bashed. So how do you do that? And it was taken to stoneware, and then I put it back in at earthenware, and then I put it back in at luster, and I put it back in. I can fire sometimes 5 times, 6 times, 4 times. It just depends, because I'm just not happy with just that's it. I have to push everything to its absolute limit, you know. It's quite crazy.
What clay are you using here, Maggie?
I'm just using the terracotta clay that I've probably got from years of mixing. It was probably Cape Pottery Supplies and Camel Potteries, and I don't know, I haven't really, that's the thing, is to get clay here that I can really like work well with. I tried certain clays before from people here, and then the glaze doesn't fit. So then you got a whole drama with the glaze not fitting with the clay. So it's a whole story.
You are based in Elizabeth, Maggie?
No, Kloof in KZN.
Oh, you're in KZN, yes. Yeah, because not a lot of suppliers out there.
No, so I get from Glazecore a lot and from PSMO, and then I've got from Cape Town. But the thing is, everything is so pricey to courier. You know,
yeah, because of the clay.
Yeah, there's a few of us that share, but it doesn't also always work either that way either. So my husband does go to Johannesburg quite a lot, so he picks up clay for me. You know, the clay is the main thing. I get Glazecore clay because that's the most stable. At one time I tried the Glazecore clay from earthenware right up to cone 10, you know, and it came out fantastically, and it didn't warp or anything, and the glaze was brilliant. But I've started now just using the Glazecore earthenware because financially I can't really afford to do stoneware anymore. And I love stoneware, and funny enough, I'm feeling more like that dullness again. But yeah, that, you see, that's just dipped. That's just a dip, and I like the way it went onto the terracotta. But I mean, that form is just not right, but I just love the way the glaze does. That's wax crayons. I did a course online with Diane Fate. And
Yes.
that was one of the things we had to make and do. And that fish was also another one that she made us. She didn't tell me to make a fish. It was just one of the exercises that we did with just doing stuff, which has got a lot of information. I mean, and that's just stencils. And that's also from Charmaine Haynes. I've loved Charmaine Haynes' work for a long, long time. I've collected quite a bit of hers from in the early 90s. And this was also experimenting with printing on the clay, you know, and then putting glazes over and refiring and things. So I like to look, sorry,
I'm just flipping through the pictures. You can stop me if you want.
I like to look through something and it's got a little bit more of a pull of something that, what is this pot, or who made this? And I mean, when Kathy Brennan said to me, you know, you got to make pots that last forever and not like are terrible because they might outlast you, you know, 1,000 years or something. You got to really seriously think about it. It's quite a responsibility, you know, because I've got a lot of nonsense as well. This year I just put in to show you that the stoneware pot that I made quite a few of those. And in that time that I made them, people didn't like that kind of glaze or that kind of roughness or the firing or whatever. But now, funny enough, the other day I got a phone call from somebody who'd seen these bowls at their friend's house and they wanted them. So it's funny how things come in and out and go backwards and forwards in fashion, and what appeals or what doesn't appeal, you know. This was also just trying to work with different textures, and why I put this one in was to say, okay, so I made this nice big round, almost like a potjie pot size. We get so stuck on decorating, or what glaze do we use? How can we now push this pot further to make it its own pot, to make it a story, you know, and make it something? Do you do white? Do you do turquoise? Do you do oxides? You know, how do you sort of,
All those terrible choices.
all the choices, and then in the end one doesn't know, you know.
You don't start off thinking this is how I'm going to use glazes. You start off and you progress in the process.
The process starts, for me, I love the process. That's where I'm hooked. I love the process. I love the whole clay and the elements and the fire and the, you know, the whole thing of that whole craft. I love it. And then it starts to sort of become no, I don't have a real plan. It sounds crazy, but it just ends up coming back as what it is. I never know what the end result is going to be. I don't try and make it that.
It's basically because you work on one-off pieces, Maggie. You don't do production pottery. You know,
no, I don't do production, and I'm not a hobbyist, and I'm not a studio. What I don't know what you would sort of put it as. I suppose I'm an artist using clay. I don't know what, if you wanted to put it that way. I don't know how you would categorize something like that, because Sue Greenberg was very much about, in those days, you got to identify yourself as the studio potter or as the production person, or, you know, where is your place in this whole thing? And who knows, you know?
What it may, ceramic artist, ceramicist.
I don't know.
As long as you're happy. This is one of your
sorry?
This is one of your first pots.
This is one of the pots that sent me on this kind of better, deeper journey of saying, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm not going to try and fit into what everyone's saying is a good pot to a bad pot to a, you know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not necessarily everybody's, as my mother always says, teacup, but it's not everybody's cup of tea, you know. How do you say what is good and what is not good? I think we understand when we see something, if we love it, we love it. There's no, sometimes the quirkiest, strangest things, and it's wonderful to, I love like this kind of platform. Thank you so much, because it opens up so many discussions about do you really, really see it only through your way, or it's wonderful to see it through other people's eyes? You know, Kathy and I can go somewhere and she'll get so excited about something and I'll think, what is she so excited about? I'm not feeling it, you know, or I will, and then she'll also, so there's this like interaction that happens when you do mix and talk about things that you enjoy or make. I think it's a great platform.
I just love how you've found your own identity, you know, immediately one can identify this is a Maggie Matthews pot, you know.
Oh, you think so? Well, that's just happened then, because I never thought like that at all.
Yes, you've got your own style, you know, and I think that is what's important, not to listen to what other people say you have to do. You must do what comes from your heart. You know, when you're in a studio doing production lines like Garth, it's a different setup, you know, there's a different discipline to that.
And I think that for me, if somebody says they're going to take away my kiln or my studio, it's like, that's my lifestyle. It's my whole way that I live. It's what I do. So it's not something that one can just say, oh, well, I've just done that being that got the t-shirt, you know.
Absolutely.
It's part of your everyday thoughts or living or thinking or seeing or being. So working with clay has something very grounding and very real, because there's also that whole story of not being able to really predict and really control. It does whatever it wants to do. You might not be in a good mood that day or something, or, you know, and it cracks, or but one does get to master it a lot more as one gets into it more. You have a lot more of a confidence in the way of understanding that what you're doing is okay. But I don't know if we really ever do think that it's okay. I think we're always looking for that perfect pot or that perfect, I don't know. I'm not talking, maybe I'm talking for myself, not for everybody.
But I think we all need to, you know, keep on, because if we don't keep pushing our own limits, we will stagnate and it becomes boring, and then you can actually see that in your work.
Yeah, I think we got to be careful of, oh, well, it works and makes money, you know, so therefore I must do this.
Yeah,
yeah, sorry?
There's that fine line, you know, what is the end motivation? Is this about making money? And is it a product that will sell? We all go through those phases, I think.
But I also think that if you are the provider, where I've been very, very fortunate in that I've been a kept woman in a certain way, you know, so I haven't had to make the salaries and make the food monies and things like that. So I think it's very, very difficult if you are needing to use your craft and everything to survive. I think that's a whole different ball game. So I can't speak on that in that way, you know.
Yes. Any questions from anybody there for Maggie? We're all gone quiet now. Maggie's
everybody's like, am I boring everybody? Sorry.
No, not at all. It's been very interesting. The contrast that, you know, your work versus, you know, Garth's work, which is a studio potter and he's doing production, you know, there's such a huge contrast, but there's value in both sides. And that is what makes clay so exciting. I just loved what you said, Garth, that a pot must look like it's holding air, you know, holding a breath. I just love that. You know, it's a vessel that keeps something. You put a different value to it. And Maggie, yours is all about surface decoration and telling a story in the combination of techniques that you use, like layers. I love that.
I would love to be able to throw a pot that would have the sort of surface textures that Maggie's pots have. That would be something very exciting. But, you know, it's just years of experience to get those end results that she's got. So, but maybe I must be looser. Maggie's very loose, and it's lovely to see. And I'm quite tight, you know, quite anal about my decoration and everything. But I must say, I would love to be able to do that sort of looseness and free expression. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Garth. Kathy and I, we worked together for a little while in Underberg quite a lot when she had a studio. And it was fun because she also said that she wanted to be looser and I needed to be tighter. So we kind of had a good combination. It was good to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I would love to do one day? I don't know if you've seen the collaboration that Justin Rothshank does in America. I don't know if you know him. He does a lot of rock.
Oh, yes, I do know of him.
And he does a lot of decals, red poppy decals, which is his kind of signature. But they started a project where they do collaborations. For instance, Garth would throw a pot and you will send a pot to Maggie and Maggie will put her signature work on your pot and that will be the collaboration. Or I make a signature style, or say you throw a pot, Garth, and you send it to me and I do it with my signature decoration. And that becomes a collaboration. Don't you think that would be a nice project?
Yeah, it sounds like fun. It can either double or half in price.
I just think the possibilities that it opens up to think creative, but also to keep your identity, but then also to just touch and feel somebody else's work and work on somebody else's work. I think it puts a different feeling of how am I going to do this? Or how will I work together with this? I would love to do a project like that. So watch the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Collaborations would be fun, you know. Yeah, for sure.
And then maybe have a nice special exhibition just for collaborations, you know, but and selectively choose who you want to collaborate with. I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I think it can be done. I did art therapy years ago and it was quite difficult because a lot of people, there was one woman that got so angry with me because I put daisies on her painting and you know the child daisies that you do. And she was so angry with me because how can I do such a thing to her artwork? So, you know, there is a kind of letting go in the sense of that, you know.
You weren't being serious in it.
Sorry?
There might be a
serious
well, Garth, thank you for your time and your wonderful journey. It's been amazing. I've seen some inspirational pots in your presentation. You know, now that we're on a journey of wood firing, it's a whole different ball game for us. So I think I can learn so much more from you. Maybe you should come up here to Joburg and do us a little workshop on throwing and also maybe do some firing with us. We'll see how it goes in the new year.
Yeah, the best trip I ever did was I went up to Duranki, Isaias Bosch's place. I actually met him just before he died, about 4 or 5 months before he died. And that was absolutely wonderful. I mean, for us Anglo-Oriental guys, he's the icon and the ultimate, because there's a real combination of a really skillful technical master with an artistic background, you know. And some of those pots he produced, I don't think it will ever be produced again. He was firing to almost 1400 degrees, high 1300s with these porcelains and that sort of thing. They're really remarkable, man, and a beautiful setting. So yeah, I love road trips. And my wife's brother lives in Pretoria, so we come up there every now and then. So I'll definitely make a chance to see some of you, yeah. And yes, please come down to Cape Town, pop in here, I'll put you up. We can have a long discussion over red wine about pots.
I'd love to come to where you live.
Absolutely. Do that.
Wonderful. I've never been to your side of the place.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, folks, all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Have a lovely weekend. I will see how I can post the recording.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.